In 1978, a small reconnaissance plane was flying high above the rugged, snow-capped peaks over the forests of Siberia. The pilot, Ivan Petrov, a grizzled man in his early 50s, was scanning the landscape below through the cockpit window when he spotted a small clearing on the mountainside. From this height, the clearing appeared to have long, straight furrows etched into the ground, was suggesting signs of human cultivation. Pilot said to himself with puzzled, "What's that?" Pilot told over radio, "Base, this is Eagle 1. I'm seeing something unusual at 10,000 feet up the mountainside. Looks like cultivated land." Base, crackling through radio. "Repeat, Eagle 1, did you say cultivated land?" Pilot, confidently, "Affirmative. Looks like someone's been living here." His co-pilot, Sergei, a younger man with a curious spirit, was adjusting the radio. Ivan said to Sergei, "We're nearing the coordinates. Keep an eye out." Sergei said curiously, "You really think there could be someone living out here?" Ivan replied, "In Siberia, anything's possible." The pilot had been sent to find a spot to land a group of geologists who were in the district to prospect for iron ore. When the geologists learned of the pilot's sighting, they decided to investigate. This remote mountain, over 150 miles from the nearest known human settlement, had no records of inhabitants according to Soviet authorities. As the plane continued to circle, some men and women gathered outside, staring up in awe and confusion. Their weathered faces and humble surroundings were highlighting the stark contrast between their isolated existence and the modern world. In the remote wilderness of Siberia, a forgotten family had been discovered, living in isolation for decades. This is the incredible story of the Lykov family, a tale of survival, resilience, and the unyielding human spirit. In 1936, deep in the heart of the Soviet Union, a man named Lykov made a decision that had changed his family's fate forever. The Lykov family patriarch was an old man named Karp, who belonged to a fundamentalist Russian Orthodox sect known as the Old Believers. Following the atheist Bolsheviks' takeover of Russia in 1917, Old Believers faced persecution. The Bolsheviks outlawed Christianity and murdered Karp's brother on the outskirts of his village in 1936. Karp quickly responded by gathering his family and abandoning civilization altogether. Karp and Akulina Lykov, with their two children, 9-year-old Savin and 2-year-old Natalia, fled their hometown of Lykovo eastward. They ended up in a dwelling in the taiga near the Yerenot River, 250 kilometers, 160 miles from any settlement. They sought refuge from the outside world. Deep into the Siberian forest, the family lived in isolation for the next 4 decades. With no modern tools or supplies, they constructed a modest cabin and began their life of seclusion. The family lived off the land, hunting, foraging, and growing what little they could in the short Siberian summer. Life was incredibly harsh. The Siberian winters were brutal, with temperatures often plummeting well below freezing. The Lykovs faced numerous challenges, including severe weather, limited food supplies, and the constant threat of predators. Despite these hardships, they endured, their faith and determination keeping them going. Over the years, the Lykov family grew. 2 more children, Dmitry and Agafaya, were born in the wilderness in 1940 and 1944. They never having seen another human being outside of their immediate family. The children were raised with the skills necessary to survive in the harsh environment, learning to hunt, trap, and grow food. Despite the Lykov family being able to produce 2 children while in the wilderness, the isolation made it extremely difficult for everyone to survive. They had to improvise with the limited resources available, using hemp cloth to make clothes and crafting shoes from birch bark. When their metal kettles rusted, they resorted to using birch bark for replacements, which couldn't withstand direct heat, complicating their cooking efforts. In 1961, a devastating snowstorm destroyed their crops, forcing the family to eat shoes and tree bark. In a heartbreaking act of sacrifice, Akulina chose to starve so that her children could have more to eat. By 1978, the Lykovs had been living in complete isolation for over 40 years. Then a group of Soviet geologists on a mission to prospect for iron ore made an astonishing discovery. Intrigued and determined to investigate, the geologists landed near the clearing and approached the cabin. What they found was beyond belief. a family that had been completely cut off from the world since 1936. Karp Lykov and his children, now grown, greeted the strangers with a mix of fear and curiosity. Akolina tragically had passed away in 1961 due to starvation during a particularly harsh winter. The geologists were amazed at the Lykovs' ability to survive under such extreme conditions. The cabin consisted of a single room that was cramped, musty, filthy, and cold. Its floor was made up of potato peel and pine nut shells. It was hard to believe that anyone actually lived there. They shared food and supplies with the family and documented their incredible story. Despite their isolation, the Lykovs had managed to retain their religious faith and traditional way of life. Over time, the Lykov family adapted to occasional contact with the outside world, but they remained deeply rooted in their beliefs and lifestyle. Given the hardships that the family endured in the wilderness, it is surprising how reluctant they were to accept help from the geologists and leave the forest. Initially, the only gift that the family would accept from the geologists was salt. Eventually, however, they ended up accepting knives, forks, handles, grain, pens, paper, and an electric torch. Nevertheless, in 1981, 3 of the family's 4 children died within a few days of one another. When Dmitry got pneumonia, the geologists offered to get a helicopter to take him to a hospital. But he was unwilling to abandon his family and told the geologists, "A man lives for howsoever God grants." Either way, following the deaths, the geologists tried to persuade Karp and his remaining child, Agafia, to leave the forest. Both refused to do so. They were devoted to their simple lifestyle. On February 16, 1988, Karp Lykov died in his sleep, 27 years to the day after his wife, Akolina. Agafia buried him on the mountain slopes, attended by the geologists. She then returned to her humble home, saying, "The Lord will provide." In January 2016, it was reported that Agafia Lykova was airlifted to a hospital due to leg pain. Agafia was treated at a hospital in Tashtagol and planned to return to the wilderness once emergency services were able to airlift her home. According to the Siberian Times, she did, and as of mid-2019, she was still living there. In 2021, it was reported that the oligarch Oleg Deripaska had paid for the construction of a new cabin in the wilderness for her to live in due to the deterioration of her previous dwelling. Thanks for watching. Please join the conversation and let us know what part of the Lykov family story resonated with you the most. We'd love to hear your comment about this family's decision to escape the entire human society and isolate itself. Your comments and insights are important to us, and we look forward to reading them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of human resilience and survival.